Okay, so thanks for letting me help out. We're gonna jump right into it. Let me pull up my notes here. So I'm gonna just give you some general background information stuff first. If you follow these steps, your website will definitely be more secure. I made this number up, 99%. I don't know if it's 90% or whatever, but your website will be a more secure than the overwhelming majority of websites on the internet. There's no doubt. I've worked with, I don't know, thousands, but at least hundreds of websites. And many of them that I work with are in about the state yours is in. It's not bad, it's not good, but it's just about average for somebody that, installs plugins and just kind of sets it and forget it. So how are WordPress websites hacked? I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This is from like 3 years ago, but it's actually still accurate. It's plugins. When plugins become outdated, they tend to get more and more vulnerabilities because there's more people looking at them, especially plugins that are not maintained, plugins that haven't been updated in 3 years. Now, a plugin that gets an update today, a vulnerability might be found for that plugin, for that plugin's update that just happened, which is called like a 0-day exploit, but generally it's plugins that just aren't updated anymore. Hackers like to look, as somebody who used to be a computer hacker going back to the 80s and 90s, look for the low-hanging fruit. Any website really can be compromised with enough patience, with enough time, and with enough research. So the goal isn't to totally secure your website to where it's unhackable. It's to do enough things to where all the bots and scripts and even the humans that have a lot of time looking for vulnerabilities will just move on to the next website, right? So you just want to don't want to be the low-hanging fruit, and that's what we're gonna try to do here. So plugins by far and away, then brute force hacking, the core code, et cetera, et cetera. So you're only as strong as your weakest link. So this basically means if you're not enforcing strong passwords and you have an admin that's using the password ABC123, then that's your weakest link and you're going to get compromised, right? Have offsite backup for ransomware purposes. I do see you have backup. I'm assuming through DreamHost. I'm assuming they do backups. I also see that you are doing backups through Updraft, which is something I recommend in this document as we go along. That's good. The only thing I would recommend that I don't know if you're doing or not is once a month or so, just take a backup and store it off-site. So the reason this is important is what ransomware folks do is that they're smart enough to know that people have backups. So after they compromise a site, a lot of them are patient. They'll wait a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, even a year sometimes wait that amount of time to pass before notifying the owner that their site's been compromised. The reason they do this is they want those backups to expire. And if you have one off site, it might be a year old, but at least you have something, right? So it's just something I don't know why I'm getting notifications. Interesting. I would definitely have at least once every 3 months, take a backup from Updraft or from DreamHost and just put it on, a thumb drive or something like that. Or if you store your backups on DreamHost, then you have them on Google Drive, do one on a thumb drive. If you store them on an FTP server, then have one on Google Drive. Just you want it in 2, but at least 2, preferably 3 locations. It's not just WordPress. It's, if your operating system isn't secure, if MySQL or your database software isn't secure. Now you're on DreamHost, so don't worry about a lot of that. But if you want to go look into that stuff here, you don't maintain the OS. You don't maintain the web server. They do that, but it's more than just WordPress is just one piece of the puzzle. Google your website and see if it shows up on any hack sites. I looked, it didn't. It's something I would do every 3 months. Just Google your website and look at the search results and see where it shows up. Subscribe to the free email list at WordFence. Click here. Subscribe to their free newsletter. It's awesome. You'll get all kinds of security updates and whatnot. Let me see. Actually, I think okay, I thought they might have changed the URL or sent it off to a different company or something. Anyway, sign up for that. You'll get all kinds of good. It's a lot of proactive stuff. Alert notifications, tutorials, all kinds of good stuff. So I definitely would subscribe to that. If you were managing more of the stack, like the OS, the web server, the database, PHP, et cetera, you might want to sign up for these, but that's not something you're doing. So don't worry about it, but I'm keeping it here just in case you want to take this, to another customer perhaps, or if you start to manage your websites on your own. So WP Scan, it's a command line scanner, which we'll get into below. You can get 25 free lookups per day. So let's like if you have 25 plugins, you can scan those without paying anything. I have a paid account, but we did that below and we'll get into that. And Mozilla Observatory, just run a scan here. Whoops, let me pause it real quick. Okay, yeah, it's actually launches the new version. It's down still. I knew something was going on. I forgot to go back and look, to be perfectly honest with you. It was why I paused it. I was going to run it and put it on the report, but it's down until January 25, 2024. It's just a free security scanner. Not a big deal. We have all other kinds of checks we're doing, but something to set a calendar reminder for, which I just did, and go check it out when it comes back up. So that's something I would manually run once a month. Okay, so your hosting provider. Use a strong hosting provider password and routinely change. So the password you gave me was pretty good. Now, I don't know if you routinely change it or not, but that's something you manually have to do. I don't think DreamHost will notify you every 30 days to change it. So that's a pain in the butt, but that's something you manually need to do. Are FTP accounts valid and created with a strong password? So I know this is kind of basic stuff, but it does matter. I don't see here where I saw FTP accounts. So if you have any FTP accounts, any SSH accounts, make sure they have strong passwords. Again, set a calendar reminder, change them monthly, and just make sure they're still needed. You'd be surprised how many websites I've worked with. And once we finally find out how the site got compromised, we think, sometimes you can't totally tell, but there'll be an FTP account laying around there that was created 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that they forgot about. And that's a possible attack vector, right? Especially if it has a weak password. To only have things enabled, especially with admin access, that you're actually using. Same thing with SSH. Make sure you have access to these logs. You may not be able to with DreamHost, but see if you do it. It's something I would check with them. This is basically in case your site gets compromised. You'll have verbose enough logs where you can track down, hopefully go to the authorities and try to track down what's going on. Okay, so set up downtime monitoring. I use Uptime Robot. It's a free service. I mean, I think you get like free 10 free probes or something like that. So for one website, it's fine. For a handful of websites, we're fine. It's basically going to send a probe on port 443, which is SSL, and make sure your website's responding. If it is, hold on one second. Let me check. Actually, they might have changed that. Anyway, we don't need to get into technical details, but basically it's going to make sure your website's up. If it's not, you're going to get an email alert. So why this is important, one thing hackers do when they compromise your website is they'll take it down, right? And you want to get an alert if your website's down. It's also just a good practice. You don't want your website to be down. Surprisingly, many clients I've worked with, they'll find their website might go down for 2 or 3 hours at a time, and they never knew it. It's just their hosting provider is doing updates without telling them. Some of these more shady hosting providers. So just as a good rule of thumb, you want to know if your website's down. So it's for free. You can do it there. Something I definitely would do. Use two-factor authentication if it's possible. I don't know. I didn't log in with two-factor authentication to DreamHost. I don't know if you do, but something let's actually look real quick. Let's go just real quick. Security. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So it is something to make sure, and you get one. This is a really good incentive. So this is something you would. Yeah, definitely want to fix that. Secure authentication, two-factor authentication, meaning you log in with your username and password, and then you log in with something else, whether it's Google Authenticator on your phone, whether it's a text message, or whether it's an email, something. That's probably the single best thing you can do for security is set up two-factor authentication. And I'm going to show you how to do that on your website, and that's something I would do immediately. Routinely scan for malware and vulnerabilities. So you have WordFence, the free version. I use iTheme Security Pro, and it just got renamed like last week to Solid. Was it Solid WP? I think. And I have an agency license for it. So if you bought the license on your own, I think it's like, yeah. So now it's called You'll see my documentation here still says iTheme Security Pro because it just got changed like last week or 2 weeks ago, and I haven't had a chance to update it yet. But I have an agency license for it. If you bought a license for yourself, it would be, I think it's like $80 per year, something like that. But with me, it's something I give you for free. If you decide, you we're going to work together and you want me to do some of these changes for you. And you'll have it, as long as I'm doing this, you'll have it for free. So that's, free $80 right there, or $50, whatever it is. Okay, where are we at? And then also, their scanner goes back to the WP scan database, which I like. The WP VulnDB is what it was called, or at least that's what it's called. I think that got changed too. There's a lot of changes recently. But I also like to do like a free scan weekly, like the Security Scanner. Just go here and type in your website. You didn't have any vulnerabilities, but I don't like to just use one source. I like to use my primary source, which is going to do the daily scan, which is iTheme Security Pro or Solid WP. I'll just call it iTheme Security Pro because I'm not used to calling it Solid WP yet. But you want to get an insight from another point of view, right? So this is why I would just set up a calendar reminder and do a security scan once a week. Because, the way they implement their checking, their algorithms, their fingerprinting, all that's just a little bit different for each company. Okay. If you manage the operating system, you'd want to use something like ClamAV on Unix or on Linux, but you're using DreamHost, so they're doing that for you. You're using SSL everywhere, that's good. You don't have any mixed content, and I checked your Whois domain record, and that looks good. Okay, so moving on. So these are more advanced things. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do them, but things can get a little bit more tricky. Disable directory browsing. So you can read here about it. Even though I try to go to a directory on your website, it won't let me. It is detecting WP scan is getting something because directory listing is enabled. So what this would mean is if this worked, I would see all the files in this directory on the operating system. So we just need to disable that. And we'll get into that more below by clicking here. And that's something iTheme Security Pro can fix. So you'll see I use iTheme Security Pro because WordFence is good. It's a good application firewall, but iTheme Security Pro does so much stuff, and you'll see that as we go along. Install WP CLI if possible. That's a command line interface to WordPress, so you can add and remove users from the command line. You can disable themes, remove plugins, add plugins, etc., etc. I don't think DreamHost is going to allow you to do that, so that's why I did an NA. Change your WordPress database prefix. Everybody knows the prefix of a WordPress database. This is, again, not becoming the low-hanging fruit. Just use a tool like iTheme Security Pro and change your WordPress database prefix from WP to, it doesn't even matter, JB, Q9, whatever. This is another big thing here. This is another critical thing I would do. Restrict access to your dashboard based on IP address. Now, I made a video on this on my YouTube channel. Let me get the link here. My laptop is totally slow. Right here. And I'll explain what this is. Let me make sure this is it. Hold on one second. Oh, we got an ad. Okay, so watch that. What this means is if somebody gets your password, your WordPress password, they can log into your backend and do all kinds of stuff. Another layer of security is to lock down. Let me pause it. I'm going to show you what it looks like for me. Hold on. I'll be right back. Okay, on this website, cyberwonka.com, which is where I sell some movie replica things. It's very dated. I've been meaning to update it for 5 years. I just haven't, so don't judge me based on the design. It's very old and tacky looking. Basically, anybody coming from... So let me step back. If somebody had my admin password on Cyberwonka, they could log in and do whatever they wanted to. However, since I've configured this in HT access, they have to be coming from one of these IP address ranges. So if I tried to log into my back end here, and I wasn't coming from one of those whitelisted IP addresses, I would get an error message. And I could show you that by opening a VPN session, but I'm not going to. But that's just another layer of security, right? So that's something that's very, very important. And of course, if you travel a lot, it can become a pain in the butt. But it's always, so you'd have to go in at your SSHN or go in through your hosting provider and update that text file, that htaccess file at the OS level, and add the IP address you're coming from. So if you're traveling all the time, or you could remote into your computer, at your desk at home and get in that way safely. So you always have to balance convenience with security. It's something I definitely would do, or at least look into it. And if it's not clear what I'm saying, let me know and I'll go over it more. Disable error reporting and debugging. You're good there. Why this is important is when people are troubleshooting issues, a lot of time they'll turn on error reporting and debugging to find out what's going on. However, what a lot of smart hackers do is if they find sites that have that turned on, they will get those very verbose errors to determine what's running on that server. WordPress plugin version numbers, directories, all that stuff. And all of that reconnaissance, all of that information can be used to possibly compromise that site. So you just want to make sure when you're not debugging and when you're not troubleshooting an error, that error reporting and debugging are both turned off, and they are. Disable login hints. You have it set already. This basically means if I type in an invalid username, you don't want it to say invalid username. You want it to say invalid username or password, right? And that's turned on. That's good. I think that might be default. I need to check for WordPress now, to be honest with you. You don't want to give a hint as to what, if it's a bad password, you don't want it to say bad password. You don't want them to know if the issue is the username or the password. Does that make sense? Okay, hide WordPress version number. So these are links. You can click and learn about this stuff. So the more information you give to these bots, to these attackers, hackers, whatever you want to call them, crackers, whatever the hell you want to call them. So let's say I have a vulnerability for WordPress 5.2. I'm going to use like Shodan, or let me just show you this. Show you how easy this is. Even if you don't know any coding, you can use a website like Shodan and search for WordPress. Let's see, I don't know if 5.1 is even a real WordPress version. I think it was. So you can see in the headers coming back, this is powered by, well, it's okay. We can see these are all WordPress. So it's mod layout 5.1. So let's say I had a vulnerability for mod layout 5.1. All I would have to do is, this is like a search engine for what's running on servers, right? So I could just come here and search mod layout 5.1 and find all the sites. So this is an IP address that are running mod layout 5.1 and try mod vulnerability on that server. So the more of this fingerprint information, this identifiable information you can hide, the better. Whether it's, hopefully you could hide that you're using WordPress altogether. However, that's not always possible. And I'll show you how you can do most of it. But you definitely want to hide, your plugins if possible. Or if not, and I can show you how to do that. Or at least the plugin versions, right? So if you're using, Joe's plugin, you don't easily want it to show that you're using Joe's plugin version 5.2. You want it to show you're just using Joe's plugin. So what they'll do is they'll be like, okay, well, we're moving on to the next one. So what's going on is somebody has a script that's querying IP address after IP address after IP address, looking for mod layout version 5.1. If you don't show up on that list, which you won't because you're just mod layout, they're going to go on to the next victim. 98% of the time, right? Now you might get one person that's super bored or somebody that has a grudge against you that's going to do it, and it's always possible. But again, you're just trying to avoid being the low-hanging fruit. That's the name of the game. Where are we at here? Hide signatures. So I just showed you Shodan there. Now, like hide, I also have an agency license for Hide My WP Ghost. What it does, if you look at a website, it does a lot of stuff. But one thing it does, if you go to your website, and it's slow because I'm logged in right here. So if you're logged in, it's always going to be slower. View page source. And there's multiple ways it gets it. This is just one way, is to look at the actual source code. You can see there's all kinds of work like WP content. So domain, WP content is a standard directory. There's WP admin, right? All these very standard directories. What this plugin does is it obfuscates this, and you can rename these directories whatever it wants. So these scripts that are looking for all this stuff, it's not going to get that far because you're not even going to have a WP content directory. You are, but it's going to be of a different name, right? It's actually, the name stays the same on the operating system, but it's obfuscated when it delivers it here in the source code. Let me pause it real quick. Okay, I was actually going to show it to you in action, but I literally, in the last 3 weeks, just got the Hide My Ghost. It's an AppSumo deal, the agency license for it, and I'll click on that link and show you. And am migrating away from this one because I was using the free version and it was kind of limited. But I got this AppSumo deal. Let me move it over here so you can see. Is it still available? It's a $60 for, let me see. If you don't know about AppSumo, you should check it out. It's awesome. Lifetime purchase for $59. Now I have the agency license, which is I can use it on unlimited site for $177. But if you went and bought this product not on AppSumo, you'd be paying, you know, a yearly fee continually. So anyway, that I was going to show it to you in action, but I'm in the middle of migrating to Ghost. That's why I don't have it yet. So anyway, you get the idea. It's really, that's critical that you do this stuff. You're not going to be able to hide everything, but again, you want to hide as much as you can, reasonably. And you just don't want to, you want to not become that low. I sound like a broken record. You don't want to be that low hanging fruit. So if you could buy that if you want, but like I said, I have an agency license as of a few weeks ago, so it's something you'd get for free. You're not using Cloudflare, so Cloudflare is a content delivery network. It has some obvious security benefits to it. It kind of stays as a buffer in between the website visitor and yourself. And I mean, Cloudflare is a giant company. It does its own protection against bots and et cetera, et cetera. So you probably know what Cloudflare is. If not, let me know and I'll explain it. Delete README, et cetera, et cetera. So let me show you this. So this is another way it's generally bots, honestly, determine what version of WordPress you're using or plugins you're using. So you can imagine this README changes from time to time. So let's say in this version of README, the requirement for SQL is 5.7. In an older version, it might have been 5.6, right? So this is another way these are all the different things that these scripts check to determine what version of WordPress you're using. So you just want to delete this. You don't want to be giving this information out. So there's a lot of bots out there. The one thing they check is the README file, or install PHP, right? And see if that exists and see if they can determine version information, right? They're very not smart strips, but they exist. And if you don't exist, then you're not going to be on that list, right? Like there's no magical way to know if you're running WordPress. There has to be something, whether it's a file existing or a version number in the source code or a header being returned as an HTTP header, right? So as much of that as we can remove or obfuscate as possible, the better. License HTML, et cetera, et cetera. License.txt. Let me show you that one. Right here, see? Now the license, I think this is a standard GPL license. Honestly, I haven't looked at it in a long time. Yeah, so it probably hasn't changed in a long time. But who knows? I don't keep an eye on this stuff, you know. Okay, that doesn't even exist. But you get the idea. And you can use iTheme Security Pro. It does all this automatically for you. But I manually like doing it just because I like to go see if I come across any new files that WordPress put out there. Move WordPress files outside of the public HTML directory. So this is just another level of security. Not a huge deal, but it's something I probably would do. This could be almost like yellow. It's if you really want to do it. It generally doesn't cause any problems. If we're using Ghost or WP hide, probably don't need to do this because the directories are already being obfuscated anyway. Like I said, instead of it being WP content, your directory would be, you know, you could call it, you know, my content. That's what mine was called. Or you could call it Joe. You could call it whatever you wanted, right? So these are all just multiple levels of security. Harden PHP, there's not much you can do here. There's some you can do, but since DreamHost probably does this for you. Okay, so that's like more or less hosting provider stuff. So let's go into WordPress. So check health status. So this is something you want to set a reminder and check once every couple weeks, once a month or once a week, something like that. So let's go, I never can remember where it is. Tools, health. I think I have it all written down here actually. Yeah, see, boom. So These are a lot quicker, so we're going to blow right through this. What are we at? Okay, 24 minutes. Wow, we're going to go a lot longer than I thought. Okay, so it's going, and you can see, you just need to find out what's going on here. And I can help you with performance as well, so let me know. Remove inactive plugin. This is kind of just a generic thing, right? Because sometimes you might have, I mean, that's definitely something I'm going to point out below, but it's something that's always going to, you might have inactive plugins there for a reason. Is PHP up to date? Yes, it is. I'll show you how to show that. All you do is go here. You can see a bunch of versioning information, site health, then go to server. While it's loading, I'm going to get a sip of my drink. It is super slow, isn't it? Oh, here we go. So there's a bunch of WordPress information, but what I generally like looking at here is what I don't like, I just do, is look at server information. You can see your PHP version. That's good. You have a lot of people that are still like on, let's just say, older versions, and not only is it insecure, it actually PHP gets more and more optimized over time from a performance point of view, right? You can check the time here, et cetera, et cetera. You can look at database information here. MySQL. Actually, didn't even know that was there. Never paid attention to it. I'd always drop to command line to look, but that's interesting to know. Okay. Never give out your username and password to a contractor, and that's really good. You did not do that. You don't want to give your main admin user ID to a contractor, which you didn't do. And I noticed if you go to user IDs and you go to administrators, you do have quite a few. See, these are all administrator roles, so it looks like you do a good job of that, because you don't want to have one ID and that ID be compromised. Now you have access to the OS, so you could resolve that at the OS level, but be just something you want to do. And I do like that you have activity log set up, and it's something you do need to come here every day and just scan. Like, you don't have a lot of entries. I would filter this out. You know, I don't use this one. Excuse me. You can probably filter out. Just look at like changes instead of like, failed logins. Okay, that's good. So yeah, I do like you have that. Okay, moving on. Change the admin username. You did that. You do not have an admin username anymore, because that's from just a brute force point of view. If you looked at your logs, you'd be amazed at how many times people are trying to log in to your website. Actually, you can kind of see it here. Failed login, failed login, failed login. Who are they using? Shiloh. So do you know Shiloh? It's interesting that they keep trying to log in over and over again. Looks like it is definitely some type of bot, because look at the IP address keeps changing. And there's really nothing you can do to prevent this stuff. You're just going to get these. So bottom line is you don't have an admin. So all these brute force attacks that are using the username admin, you don't have that. So that's good. Does every user still need access? And it looks like they probably do. I don't know for sure, obviously, but if you go to users and you go to administrators and you go to last login, looks like a lot of them have logged in all fairly recently, if I saw it correctly. August, there's none from like 2021 or something. So you just want to make sure that all these people stand in access. Now, iTheme Security Pro has an alert notification that'll say these people are inactive. Do you still need them? Haven't logged in for 30 days. Do they still need access? And that's something I would pay attention to. Okay, so does every let me make sure I didn't skip anything. Right. Does every user still need access? And then does every one with admin still need access? So every user is a more complex thing, obviously. Not more complex, a more time-consuming thing. Well, you only have 10 users. So I'm thinking more from like a e-commerce point of view, where customers create login information. Is your admin email correct? So just go here and make sure all these emails correct. Emails are correct, because that's where you get a lot of these notifications too. And the notifications are annoying, but they are important. So you want to make sure you don't immediately put them in a spam folder or a trash folder. And combine as many email alerts as possible into a daily digest. You can do that using iTheme Security Pro. From a security point of view, it'll send you all these notifications. You can just get a daily digest and just get that one. Set unique password. So basically this means you don't want to use the same password on multiple websites for obvious reasons. Because if it gets compromised there, it can be leaked on the dark web or wherever, and then they can use it to log into your website. However, if you have it set, you can't log into your website unless you're coming from certain IP addresses, then you're okay, right? So there's all these different levels of security. Disable anyone can register. That was done, so that's good. For strong passwords. So you don't want to allow people, I mentioned this at the very beginning, people to create a password A or a password B or a password ABC or password 1 or password 2023 with iTheme Security Pro. And this is another plugin you can use, but you can see iTheme Security Pro does all this stuff. You can force strong passwords, and it can force to make sure that they have to change the passwords every 30 days, right? Same thing with two-factor authentication. It's something I definitely do. It's built into iTheme Security Pro. So that's something I would do. I don't use Authenticator for mine, even my work two-factor authentication. I have it send me an email. So if somebody's able to compromise my WordPress password and my email and spoof my IP address, then they just are going to hack my site one way. They're going to figure out a way to get into it, right? I mean, nothing is foolproof. Back when I used to be a penetration tester and did a lot of security way back in the day, we always said the only secure computer is the one that's turned off and not connected to the internet, right? Because anything can be compromised with enough time. So I'm sounding repetitive, but you just don't want to become the low-hanging fruit. Change your login page URL. Again, this is against, for brute force stuff, you don't want your login to be WP admin, or you don't want it to be WP login. So for example, I actually have a blog. Is it? Don't even remember what the login is. Let's see here. Okay. I'll do this one. Whoops. So if you go to Cyberwonka WP admin, I hope it's set up. I don't want to give this example and it's not working. Not found, because I've customized the login page to be William login, right? So all these scripts that are just looking for / WP admin or WP login, they're not going to work. Now, of course, there's other ways to get around it, but we're just eliminating these things one by one. iTheme Security Pro can do it. Now, these are other plugins you could use. Limit login attempts to perform brute force attacks. I'm sure WordFence does it. I'm not a WordFence user, but iTheme Security Pro does it, obviously. After a certain amount of failed logins, it automatically bans that IP address. And it has a, not a cloud, but a community sourced, I can't think of my mind's I'm drawing a blank, where all these, it has a network of crowdsourcing. Is that right? Crowdsourcing. Anyway, a large pool of IP addresses that have suspicious or malicious actions. That's constantly being updated, right? So it's not just the IP addresses that your server thinks are suspicious. What about all the other people using iTheme Security Pro? It puts those into a pool, and you're part of that network, which is really cool. Add capture to login page. You don't have capture in your login page. It's something I would add, especially if you're getting a lot of failed login attempts. Sign up to see it on this mailing list for free. Have I been pwned? So anytime your password is leaked, your username and password is leaked, it'll show up here. So this is I just got an alert that I was owned. So in 2013, my email address was leaked. And sometimes it's not the password. It just could be, it'll tell you more about what it is. Username, email, encrypted password, or leaked. I'm not reading it, but I think that's what it says. So it'll give you an email list. Anytime the email address you sign up for on the mailing list, they find it leaked somewhere on the dark web or, in whatever platform they find it on. So it's something I would just add all your admin accounts to that. Have I been pwned? It's a proactive thing. I got an alert, not from Have I Been Pwned, but by Google just actually yesterday that my password for my primary Gmail account was found somewhere on the web. So I had to change that. It does the same kind of thing. Okay, we went over backups. I do like you have app updraft. That's exactly what I use. And we kind of went over why to keep them off-site. You are using keep WordPress plugins and themes up to date. It looks like you are doing that. And I looked at the settings. It does look like it does doing it. Now you can do it natively. iTheme Security Pro has a feature, but you're using easy updates, which seems to, I guess it's good. I've never used it. So use Word plugins that are still maintained. I don't like to use plugins that haven't been updated in over a year or have under 1,000 installs. You also want to check the rating, any messages in the support form. So I'll just show you. I looked at all years. All years are good. There's no automated way of doing this. It's something I would like to create. Actually, let me pause this. I'm going to make a note of it. Okay, I might actually create that plugin. The point here is I went through all your plugins one by one, clicked on this view details. So advanced custom fields, which obviously is very popular and it's not dated. I would want a trigger to go off if the first thing, if it says not tested with my WordPress version, which it would say up here, if it wasn't, if it hasn't been updated in over 6 months or a year or whatever, or has a rating below, let's say 4, or has less than 1,000 installs. Those are the kind of things you want to look out for. If you meet any of those 4 qualifications, you might want to consider a different plugin. I went through all yours. All yours are good, so you have nothing to worry about. But that is something I do need to create that plugin. Moving along. Verify all plugins are being used. So from time to time, again, another calendar reminder, just go through here and just make sure, okay, am I using activity log? I am. Am I using advanced custom fields? Because what happens is I'm guilty of this as well, especially not on my client sites as much as I am on my own, because we never treat our own as well as we do our client sites. At least that's how my life is we'll put in plugins to do stuff, and then we'll go test other things and forget about it. Next thing you know, we have 5 or 6 extra plugins laying around. Now, not a big deal. It's probably slowing your site down a little bit, but what if that plugin you're not even making use of, that's enabled, ends up being the plugin with the vulnerability that somebody uses to compromise your website, right? So you might find that, oh, I'm not even using this Folgers plugin anymore. Let's go ahead and deactivate it and get rid of it. Okay, check if any plugins or themes have known vulnerabilities. This is something that WordFence is doing for you. I believe it also goes to the VulnDB that iTheme Security Pro uses, I believe. But I also did a WP scan below, which we'll get into, and I'll show you the text output of that. And there were no vulnerabilities, as I could tell. Use a theme that's being maintained. Your theme is being maintained. You only have one theme, so you delete unused themes. Disable pingbacks. Nobody uses pingbacks anymore, so I would just go to settings and discussion and disable that. Disable the REST API for anyone not logged in. So I'll show you this. I think it's WPJ. So I'm not really a developer, but you can see here, actually I'm logged in, so it's not gonna, let me go to it where I'm not logged in. Let me see if I can see it. I might have tested where I was logged in. Yeah, so you don't want to expose all of this good, juicy data to people that aren't logged in. So for example, I think I saw Jetpack in here. So you can see, I can see you're using WordFence, Yoast, WP.com, whatever that is. I guess that's the WordPress domain, Stats App, Jetpack. But you can see this just gives a lot of good, juicy information about what's on the website. There's no credentials or anything in here, but this is where people can parse through this. Not really, humans don't, but scripts will go through here and parse through here. And it's another way they can determine, okay, well, you're definitely using Jetpack. If not, why else would it be here? And it could be that Jetpack version 4, well, it says Jetpack version 4, so my guess is you're using Jetpack version 4, right? And it might be that Jetpack version 4.2 explicitly lists this spawn sync and 4.1 didn't or something. So we've talked about that. You can see it's just a lot of information that's being exposed. You just don't want to expose this to the average person. So you want to make sure all of these, all of this data is only exposed to people that are logged in. Now, out of curiosity, let's see what version of Jetpack. Okay, 12.7. So it said V4, but that must be an internal number. It probably correlates to 12. I have no idea, but you get the idea. You don't want to expose that information to anybody. And WP iTheme Security Pro can do that. It's literally a checkbox. Use advanced WordPress logging to monitor all changes. So you do use activity log, which is good. I think you're actually using this. iTheme Security Pro has a built-in logger, so you could consolidate plugins if you switch to iTheme Security Pro, and then get notified when somebody logs in as an admin. This is something I like to know if an admin logs in, because if I'm not doing anything, and I mean, it may be different for you because you have 6 admin accounts, I think it is. So you may have admins logging in without you needing to know about it. But generally, you'll know if somebody's logging in and they shouldn't. Like if there's somebody that is not working on the site anymore, which that account should be deleted, but let's say hypothetically it's still there, and they're logging in, or you can look at the IP address and don't recognize the IP address, then that's something you want to look into. And that's the plugin you would use to do it. Okay, you are using, as you can see here, that's my preference. And I actually have, if you want to do all this on my Norzer YouTube channel, I have a video that goes over how to configure iTheme Security Pro. So you can do all of this on your own, right? That show you how to do all of this stuff. But if you want me to help out, obviously I can, right? And it looks like you're using the free version of WordFence. And WordFence is great. I have nothing against it. But it's just very limited. It just basically gives you that application firewall. Looks like it might have the two-factor authentication functionality, and you're not using it. As far as I could see, you're not using it. File detection plugin. This is built into iTheme Security Pro, and I know I sound like a broken record. This is really cool because if a file changes on the operating system in the WP content or any directory, the only one you want to really disable is the caching directory because those files are always changing. If a file changes, you want to get notified about it. Because what happens is if somebody compromises your site, they're going to put, some nefarious code somewhere on the operating system. So if you get an alert that WP config has been updated and you didn't do anything, you need to go figure out what's going on. So this will send you an email alert. And iTheme Security Pro does do that. Disable XML RPs. This is the old way of, my mind just went blank. REST API is really the main way to communicate with other applications and things outside of, I don't know why I'm getting notifications, outside of your WordPress world. So just definitely disable XML RPC. Only thing I ever used it for back, 10 years ago, I can't remember what the app was called. I could create my blog post in this program that looked like Microsoft Word, but it was a WordPress specific program. And I could do, instead of doing file save, I could do file publish in that program and it would publish to the website. And it was using XML RPC for that. And then implement spam detection. And it looks like you have Akismet working, so that's good. So if you have a spam problem, there's more we could do, but it looks like you have basic spam protection. Okay, so WP scan. So you can see I ran WP scan at this URL, enumerate vulnerable plugins, and here's my API key, which I X'd out, and this is the output. It seems like, okay, I had to update the database because I haven't used it in a couple weeks. Scan aborted. The target is responding with a 403. This might be due to a web application firewall, which it is. So a lot of scripts at that time will go away. Your WordFence has done its job, but there's always ways to get around things. Not always, but a lot of times. So I just added -- just based on experience, random user agent to the end of it, and voila, I was able to get a lot of good juicy information. A lot of your stuff's protected actually pretty good, surprisingly, since you haven't really done, looks like more than basically install the security plugin and kind of set it and forget it. You haven't done a lot of the hardcore security stuff is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so you can see here, it found that your web server was Apache. This, not great. It's middle of the road. At least it doesn't say Apache 2.2 or whatever. I don't even no idea what the latest version of Apache is. I don't really mess with Apache much anymore. You can see it found that XML RPC was enabled with 100% confidence. And this is how it found it. Oh, these are the articles confirming how it was able to find it. It found your README file, which we went over above. Must use is found. Okay, external cron seems to be working, seems to be enabled. Not really that gigantic of a deal. It found you're using WordPress 6.3.2. So ideally, we'd like to hide that. And you can see it found it here in these query strings. So whether we can hide that completely or not changes from version to version, but it's something we would try to hide. It found that you're using the theme 2023, and I believe it found, and this is where it said directory listing enabled, even though I can't list things in that directory, but there must be some some little oddball directory that it is working on for whatever reason. I'm not even sure. So we just want to go make sure directory listing is disabled, which I mentioned above. And it could be this is just buggy here. You know what I mean? But it looks like it was able to determine that it's version 1.2 with 80% confidence. Not even sure if that's out of curiosity. Let's go look. Let's go to appearance. .2, yep, see it got it, boom. And you can see here, it found this README file that only exists if you're using this theme. So let's open it up. So you can see you're in the 2023 directory, and you can see here, stable tag 1.2. So this is where it got that version number from. So we would just go and delete this readme.txt file, and then whatever else it lists down here. Okay, it's something mentioned in the style CSS. And so hopefully this would be obfuscated once we change your directory to where WP content doesn't exist, and it's just called, like, what did I say? We could call it my content. So that scanner isn't even going to get that far because it's not going to find the WP content directory. And that's using the Ghost plugin, which I'm actually in the process of migrating to. I was using the Hide for a long time, which is great, but I was using the free version. The Ghost, I got that really good deal, that agency license for $200 for unlimited for lifetime. That's why I love AppSumo. If you need really good one-time deals on business products, it's the best. I actually have a video being released today on YouTube about it. Because it's a lot of these new companies that are trying to get some momentum on their product. And a lot of products that have gone on to be killers in the SEO industry and whatever started off there. Now some of these products will charge $100, $200 a month, but we were able to get them for, one-time fees of $50 back in the day or whatever. Okay, anyway, so got that. Enumerating vulnerable plugins, plugins found no in that specific instance. And that is it. So I know it's a lot of information, whatever, 15 minutes longer than I should have. But that's it. I hope you found it useful. If you want to work together, let me know. We'll work something out. I'd be happy to help. Yeah, so sorry I couldn't get it to you earlier. Things got kind of crazy, but let me know what you think, and hope to hear from you soon. See ya.